Fibonacci sequence begins by definition with the numbers 0, 1, and then each successive number in the sequence is the sum of the previous two numbers. So we start with 0 and then 1. 0 and 1, 1 plus 1 equals 2, 1 plus 2 equals 3, 3 plus 2 equals 5, 5 plus 3 equals 8, etc, etc. If we look at the ratios of the pairs of numbers, so we start with the 2 and the 1 gives a ratio of 2. Then the important one that we're looking at is the ratio of 3 over 2 here, 3 over 2, which gives us the ratio of 1.5. And these ratios tend towards a number called the golden ratio, or phi. Now if we go back, the power of the golden ratio or section is to create harmony, and it arises from its unique capacity to unite different parts of a whole, so that each preserves its own identity and yet blends into the greater pattern of a single whole. It can be found in both nature and man-made structures. They exist in the proportions of human beings, the growth patterns of plants, animals and insects, and structures like Stonehenge and the Parthenon. If I now enter 3:2 aspect ratio into Google, it tells us that this aspect ratio has been used generally for 35mm film cameras and has been around for a long time. It is now generally superseded by different ratios 5:4, 4:3, 16:9, etc. I will now show how the ratio 3:2 is derived from the Vesica Pisces.
I'm going to draw a Vesica Pisces, and from that we're going to create a series of 3, 4, 5 triangles, which also define the size of the blocks which Macquarie used here in Australia and was later used in other parts of the world. Macquarie was not the inventor of this. I just want to point out I'm just beginning from 1810 and Macquarie period because of the and show how it was later adopted in other cities. But this is very, very, very ancient, and Macquarie simply imported it. He did not create it. So now we have a Vesica Pisces. The radius of the circles is exactly the same. So you can see. So let's call the radius of the circle, or the distance between compass points, as 1. So this is 1. This is 1. And of course, this is 1. Now, let's see. 1 again. And of course, 1. So effectively what we have is a shape that's defined by 2 by 3.
My next step is to take a closer look at the actual heights of the towers at Durham Cathedral. So if I have a look at Wikipedia at Durham Cathedral and go down here, we can see that it tells us that the tower heights, the central tower is 218 feet or 66 metres, and the western towers are 144 feet and 44 metres. In order to verify the true height of the central tower, I'm now going to refer back to an original book written in 1843. This is a digitised version of the book, and the book is called Architectural Illustrations and Description of the Cathedral Church at Durham, written by Robert William Billings, who was the architect for the cathedral at that time. I now go to page 48. And page 48 describes the central tower, and if we scroll down, we get to this part which says, in the section plate 15 are a series of letters of reference to the height of the various portions as follows. And what we see is that the central tower is actually broken down into various sections, lettered A to J, and the final height when they're all added up, gives us a true height at that time of 216 feet and 8 inches. I now take a look at Billings plate 15. It's an accurate scale drawing from the original book, and it's a drawing of the central tower and the transept looking east. Now if we zoom in and we look down at the bottom, there's a scale of 0 to 150 feet, and what I did from there, I got some accurate A3 print, got an accurate A3 printout, and I was able to accurately measure from the base here up to the top of the parapet, and the best measurement I could get was 215 feet and 5 inches. Billings South Elevation Plate 1 is a scale drawing showing us the southwest tower. So if we zoom in here, we can see similarly that there is a scale at the bottom of 0 to 150 feet. And I use this scale, and again similarly to the other one, an A3 printout and accurate measurements, and I was able to obtain a height from the base here up to the top of the parapet there, and that gave us a height for the western tower of 147 feet and 11 inches. Using the heights measured from Billings scale drawings, this gave a ratio for the heights of the towers of 1.456. My next height reference comes from the County of Durham, its castles, churches, manor houses, etc. by J.R. Boyle, written in 1892, and this book reference comes via the courtesy of Hugh McCaig. Basically it tells us that the central tower is 216 feet and 8 inches and the western tower is 146 feet, giving us a proportion of 1.484. My last ratio for the heights of the towers of Durham Cathedral goes back to a book by William Greenwell, published in 1913, called Durham Cathedral. And if we look here, we can see that the height of the central tower was stated as 218 feet. The height of the western towers was 144 feet and 6 inches, and this gave us a proportion of 1.508651. These results show documentary evidence for measurement of the towers with close ratios of 3:2 for the heights. This is but one example of the thorough application of geometry, measure and number in the spectacular design and building of Durham Cathedral. In following biblical precepts, the medieval master mason and all the workers, as co-creators with God, recreated a microcosm of creation and a simulation of the heavenly city through the highly structured layout of the building. Why were the masons so interested in geometry? This was necessary to calculate the proportion of the stone in the building. To recap, the whole number ratio 3:2 is part of the golden ratio. This ratio has the power to create harmony from its unique capacity to unite different parts of a whole, so that each preserves its own identity and yet blends into the greater pattern of a single whole. As a footnote, I asked Hugh McCaig if he thought that the aspect ratio of 3:2 for the height of the towers was an intentional constructional criteria by the master mason. His reply was, "I think it would have been intentional at least to have a ratio of 3:2 or a ratio close to it in order to allow the central tower to be dominant yet harmonise with the west towers. It is indeed a wonderful and harmonious view in the distance. What are your thoughts?"